And I was like, there's something here that I feel like as a society, we know is there, but we're scared to talk about because we don't want to come across as homophobic and we don't want to come across as stereotyping. But whether we want to admit it or not, there is something there that we are picking up on. And I think the best way to take away that stigma is just find out what it is and talk about it and research it in an ethical and respectful way so that we're not just kind of hiding in the shadows, because it's just something that I found really interesting. But I think the way I described it, that people were like, oh, okay, is I said it's like this stereotype of bisexual people wearing Doc Martens. In that...
What is that?
Exactly. But we know that not every bisexual person wears Doc Martens. And we know that not everyone who wears Doc Martens is bisexual. But somehow we've latched onto it and capitalised on it enough that bisexual people can whack on their Doc Martens as a little sign of... by the way,
yes,
I'm bi.
Or sit on their green couch, you know?
Exactly.
Hi, I'm Renee, and I'm a gender-affirming voice teacher. And welcome to Speaking Freely, an interview series about trans voice, trans advocacy, and trans liberation.
Classic Trans Am vintage American muscle.
It is Pride Month, yay! Which means it is time to talk about the topic you've all been waiting for.
Gay.
Gay voice. What makes a voice sound gay? Do gay folks have a perceivable accent? Today's guest and I discuss all this and more. Before we get into it, number one, if you're watching this in June 2026, I'm running a free 30-day trans voice practice challenge called Out Loud. Sign up at the QR code here or the link below to get your Out Loud calendar and start receiving your daily challenge emails. And number two, all three of my trans voice courses are 33% off for the entire month of June using the code OUTLOUD33. Link in the description. Okay, back to gay voice. Today, I'm talking with Erin Broadhurst, a linguistics and psychology graduate from the University of Oxford, who went on to complete a master's degree in forensic speech science at the University of York. I first discovered Erin a few years ago through a viral video about her undergraduate research into what we actually mean when we say someone sounds gay.
When you think that someone sounds gay, what is it about their voice that makes you think they sound gay?
What areas are you most interested in?
Sociophonetic. Phonetics is all about how people speak. So sociophonetics is all about how sociological factors like sex, gender, the class system, where you're from influence the way you speak.
It's giving Pygmalion, My Fair Lady.
Indeed.
Can you place me by my accent?
Okay, well first you're giving me gay voice.
Very interesting. We should go into what you mean by gay voice.
It started for me because my boyfriend brought one of his friends round, asked what I was doing. I said, I'm crocheting something, and he went, oh, I rate that. And I thought, okay, you're gay.
You're gay?
Yeah.
I thought, why do I know that? He was gay.
You're gay.
But why do I know that? And then that got me interested in what constitutes the gay voice.
In this conversation, we talk about what the research actually says about the gay voice and how it's a lot more complicated and more interesting than you might expect.
Nobody expects the gay.
If you've ever wondered whether there's actually something measurable happening when a voice reads as gay, or whether it's all in our heads, this conversation is for you. Check it out. Hi, Erin. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello. No worries, it's great to be here.
I'm so excited to talk to you about this paper that you wrote in your undergrad, but maybe before we get into that, could you introduce yourself to the people in my audience?
Yes, hello, my name is Erin Broadhurst. I graduated with a degree in psychology and linguistics from the University of Oxford. I then did my master's degree in forensic speech science at the University of York, and I'm currently applying for PhDs and kind of just seeing what happens next.
Amazing. So I really wanted to start with how the heck you got into studying gay voice. Because maybe if people are like me, they saw that really viral reel of you talking about your research.
Yeah.
But you didn't talk about in that reel how you got started studying this.
Honestly, I think I've always liked the idea of voices generally. I did a lot of theatre growing up, so a lot of kind of accent work and stuff. And loved linguistics, obviously was studying linguistics. And kind of really always was interested in the ideas of voices and how they change and how different accents are perceived. And then it started because I was watching a YouTube short, and it was of Matteo Lane, the comedian, saying, everybody clap if you can hear my gay voice. And then the whole audience clapped, and I was like, no, but I can. Why? How from your voice do I know that you're gay? And I just started noticing it around. I myself am bisexual, so kind of within the queer community, I was noticing like, you sound gay. How do I know you sound gay? And then I was meeting a mutual friend, one of my friend's friends, and he said something and I thought, oh, okay, you're gay. And I thought, why do I know that? And I was right. And I was like, there's something here that I feel like as a society, we know is there, but we're scared to talk about because we don't want to come across as homophobic and we don't want to come across as stereotyping. But whether we want to admit it or not, there is something there that we are picking up on. And I think the best way to take away that stigma is just find out what it is and talk about it and research it in an ethical and respectful way so that we're not just kind of hiding in the shadows, because it's just something that I found really interesting. And then I read a paper. I did a bit of Google scholaring, as you do. Read a paper by Smythe et al., which was a Canadian study from 2000, where they basically recorded loads of people, loads of men, both gay men and straight men, and then had people rate how gay they thought they sounded on a scale of 1 to 10. So do they sound gay or straight, and how sure are you? And from there, they were able to pick those voices out and put them on a continuum from perceptually sounds very straight to sounds very gay. So then I went to my lovely director of studies, Sam Wolfe, who was really both like an academic and pastoral mentor to me. Absolutely loved him. And he set me up with a supervisor who was actually a participant in that original study. So I go to him and I'm like, I want to study gay voices. And after a few chats, we kind of operationalized it and got down to the parameters we were looking for, and it all kind of went from there. Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, this thing about like something is happening, but what? And it's feels a little dangerous to study it too, right? Because you don't want to like identify the gay gene and then eradicate it. Right?
Exactly. I feel like that's something a lot of people in the comments, very well-meaning people, but a lot of people were worried about was that they thought that my aim was let's find the gay people. And I feel like a way I've described it that especially in the current political climate, it's scary. But I think the way I described it that people were like, oh, okay, is I said it's like the stereotype of bisexual people wearing Doc Martens. In that
what is that?
Exactly. But we know that not every bisexual person wears Doc Martens, and we know that not everyone who wears Doc Martens is bisexual, but somehow we've latched onto it and capitalized on it enough that bisexual people can whack on their Doc Martens as a little sign of, by the way,
yes,
I'm bi.
or sit on their green couch, you know?
Exactly. It's the exact same with voices. There is no one-to-one mapping. It's just the case of there was some little seed of something that people through active choice have been able to capitalize on, and it's become this whole big stereotype. But it isn't reliable. And if anything, that makes it more fun. Because it makes it more fun to investigate.
And something I really loved about this investigation is like, there's not just the sound of the voice that is gay or not. It's like, there's what gay people actually sound like, and then what voices are perceived as gay.
Perceived as gay, even if they belong to a straight person. Exactly.
Yes. I think, and that difference, like, how did you parse that in your study?
It was really hard, and I did not do it in the way I wanted to, purely just because of resource and time constraints. Because I think from the videos, people have assumed that this was some massive project I was doing over a really long period of time, and it was the only thing I was doing. When in reality, it was 1 out of 8 finals modules that I dedicated in all about 4 months to. But what I ended up doing was kind of more of a production study. And what I mean by that, it was taking a straight person and a gay person and looking at how they speak and whether there were differences there. When what I actually wanted to do was investigate voices that sound gay no matter who they belong to. But with the resources and time available, I couldn't do that big perceptual study that I wanted to do, which is the really cool thing about applying for PhDs at the moment, is my current proposal that I'm going with is essentially a rehash of what I did at undergrad, but the way that I actually want to do it, which is very much more focused on perception rather than production.
This is great. I'm happy to hear that.
So I think it's just made very clear in the discussion and things of we cannot use this to form generalizations about the gay community and about gay voices. This was one little case study I did as part of my degree to kind of start the kind of academic foray into this area. but it all needs to be taken with a massive grain of salt, honestly.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, because I think when just from the viral reel, people might have got the impression that you like wrote the book on gay voice, but really the paper is like you looked at two identical twins on YouTube, and how they speak differently, which I think is totally valuable.
Yeah.
But what I really liked about the paper was how you talked about the lit review and what we were finding already in gay voices. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about that. Specifically, I want to talk about the lisp.
The lisp. Oh, it's very interesting with the lisp because it's so interesting. The gay lisp, it's not even a lisp. That's the thing. The way
I learned that in your paper.
The way we define lisp is that it is a speech pathology. It is not an inability, but a difference in the way people pronounce the S sound that usually means that it's interdental. So the tongue almost juts between the teeth, more of a
Yeah.
yesterday I went to the shop.
Right.
Whereas the gay lisp is what we call S fronting. So when you say an S is a sibilant sound, it's an alveolar sibilant sound. The tip of your tongue is touching the alveolar ridge, which is the hard bit on the roof of your mouth. But it sounds lispier the further forward you put your tongue.
Oh.
So we get more of that of air going even more between the teeth. And that's what's happening with the gay lisp. So there was a study done by Van Borsel et al. In 2007, and they found that it's not so much lisping, it is that dental articulation of the S sound, which is pushing it more forward. And that adds into a whole bigger idea in gay speech of gay speech being more peripheral. So things being pushed to the outside of the vocal space. So that can be that vowels are wider, that back vowels are more back, that front vowels are more front or higher or lower. Everything just kind of gets pushed to the outside dimensions of the mouth is kind of something that seems to pattern in the research, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, and this dovetails a little bit with the work that I do as a gender-affirming voice teacher, because especially when I'm working with trans women who are looking to feminize their voice, as you mentioned in your paper, a lot of times we just associate the gay male voice with like a more feminine man sound, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes I'll have students who are trans women or trans feminine who are working on feminizing their voice, and their complaint is, I sound like a gay man. And it's because of this like idea that a darker resonance with like a higher pitch is giving this this gay male sound. But in your paper, you actually talk about how there is no like higher pitch among gay male speakers.
No, research has shown in terms of pitch, it's very much a perceptual phenomenon. In that, it's not that gay people have higher pitched voices, but Munson 2006 found that men with higher pitched voices are rated as gayer. So it's very much that kind of perceptual side rather than a production side. But Linville 1998 basically found that gay men don't speak higher, but again in this periphery kind of idea, there's more pitch variation, there's more highs and more lows, it's less monotone in terms of the intonation, which again points to that idea of pushing things to the extremes and the outsides of the vocal space, and pitch is what gives that idea of gayness, basically.
Okay, and just for the people who watch my channel regularly, I would call that like lots of highs and lows contour, a wide contour.
Yes.
And
wide
sometimes
contour,
we
for sure.
culturally associate that with femininity as well.
Yeah.
But I think it's actually just a sign of being like emotionally expressive, right?
Agreed. But in a society where men aren't emotional.
Well, that's it. And maybe gay men have more permission to be emotionally expressive when they're around other gay people.
Exactly. Quick reminder that the patriarchy only managed to make men seem less emotional by rebranding anger as not an emotion.
Oof. This is real talk here on the channel. Oh my gosh. So this like peripheral thing, is this related to hyperarticulation as you mentioned in your paper?
Yes. Hyperarticulation is basically, as defined by Whalen et al., the exaggeration of speech sounds. It can be done in all sorts of different ways. So making phonetic or phonological components more distinct. So making things more different from each other. Basically, if you get deep into the abstracts of phonology, sounds can only be defined as sounds because they're not something else. The only reason we know an is an is it's not an and it's not a t and it's not a p. So making those sounds more and more distinct is something that happens a lot in language, and it's something that happens a lot in language change with things like chain shifts. If one sound changes, it ends up getting a bit too close to the boundary of another sound, so that sound has to change, and we see whole systems changing. It's a big thing in language of making sure our sounds don't sound too similar to each other. And that idea of hyperarticulation is something that, again, seems to pattern a lot in terms of wide contours, in terms of very peripheral vowels, things like that. So that's what kind of led me into what I was looking at, in that also I just went around asking my friends, what do you think makes someone sound gay? And a lot of people said, oh, gay people have really good diction. I was like, what phonetic correlate could that be that's giving that impression? And something that I ended up looking at was voice onset time. Now, voice onset time, how to explain? If you've got, how deep do I go here?
We have time.
Right. We can divide all speech sounds roughly into two groups of voiced and voiceless. All vowels are voiced. That's just how they work. Consonants can be voiced or voiceless. For example, a t and a d are articulated in the exact same place in the mouth with the exact same tongue action. It's just for a t, your vocal folds aren't vibrating, and for a d, they are. Voice onset time is where you've got a voiceless sound, like a t, followed by a vowel. At some point, your vocal folds need to start vibrating again to make that vowel. There's a little delay.
Right.
And that delay between your tongue coming away from the roof of your mouth and releasing that plosive to the vocal folds vibrating is called the voice onset time. So what I was looking at was whether there were differences in voice onset time for word initial t. And what I meant by that was, what I was trying to investigate, what my hypothesis was, is I thought maybe because of hyperarticulation, the gay twin would show a longer voice onset time for t than the straight twin would, because they're wanting to make the t seem more powerful and more distinct.
So for example, like the word totally, you might go like totally, you know?
Totally, yeah. Another really fun one that I used when I presented my study at Oxford Pride, a really fun one was the way Draco Malfoy says Potter. It's very much Potter. And that very airy P, that's super long voice onset time, super long. It sounds really airy afterwards. It sounds really powerful. A really fun way to look at it as well is in English, word initial voiceless consonants are generally aspirated, which means they have a really long voice onset time, unless you put an S in front of it. So the word, like the name Kate, if you were to put an S in front and say skate, if you were to record that, chop the S off, it would sound like you were saying gate. It wouldn't sound like you're saying Kate.
I see.
And that's because when you put that S in front of it, it shortens the voice onset time. So it goes from sounding like a very powerful K to a softer G.
Got it.
Skate, not skate.
Right.
That's all voice onset time. And it was just kind of this idea that maybe this is something adding to this hyperarticulation idea that seems to be going round. So that was the general vibe.
Okay, but you had some unexpected findings.
Yes.
So your hypothesis was that the gay twin would have a longer voice onset time, but what did you actually find?
I found the opposite. I found that the straight twin actually had a longer voice onset time, which was unexpected at first, but then talking to people, I kind of managed to rationalize it a bit more. I also found a main effect of interlocutor sexuality. So I looked at the gay twin talking to another gay person, the straight twin talking to another straight person, and then the gay and the straight twin talking to each other to see, does this change as a function of who you're talking to? Are you going to want to index your sexuality loads and basically through your voice go, yeah, well, I'm gay? Or are you going to be like, I want to kind of stay away from the fact that my voice is gay. I want to pull that in a little bit. And what I expected to find was that there would be no difference for the straight person because of heteronormativity. You don't need to prove yourself as being straight because straight's seen as the default, and you don't have to minimize being straight because being straight has no stigma attached to it and there's no danger there of rejection.
Right. I would honestly argue that like I just have so many students who are straight men who want to masculinize their voice. Like, I feel like they're worried about not being masculine enough in general, even if they're heterosexual cisgender men.
True, to be fair.
You know?
Very true. And then I expected there to be more of a difference in terms of interlocutor sexuality for the gay twin. Maybe if he's with another gay person, he'll capitalize on the vocal features he developed that sound gay to kind of index, hey, we've got something in common. Maybe, and I wasn't sure with his twin, would he try to minimize his gayness to seem more like his twin? Would he try and maximize it to say, oh, we're identical twins, but I'm different, here's our differing personalities? But what I found was there was no interaction effect.
Fascinating.
In that, both the gay twin and the straight twin used a shorter voice onset time when talking to a gay person and a longer when talking to a straight person, which could just come down to general accommodation processes. If you're talking to someone that you like and you want to build a connection with, you want to sound more similar to them. It didn't seem like sexuality was kind of the main character in what was driving those differences in the conversations, which again was super interesting.
I loved this part of the paper because it really highlights the context of voice. Like, how we use our voice is so contextual. And this is something I use in my practice as a gender-affirming voice teacher, because a lot of people come in wanting to modify their voice. And I'm like, look at how you're already doing it.
Yeah.
Like, you're not talking to your boss the same way you're talking to your dog. Maybe there's something in your pet voice that you can bring into your everyday speech voice.
Exactly. We're all changing our voices all the time without realizing we're doing it.
Totally.
Which is super fun.
I love it.
Yeah.
I wanted to know more about how you felt maybe the YouTube accent played into this study that you did. Because I don't know about you, but I feel like when even for myself as a YouTuber, I hear my voice on YouTube and I'm like, that is a thing I'm doing to be a science communicator that I don't do with my friends. You know?
Yeah, I think it was definitely something to watch out for. I talked a bit in my paper about audience design, which is essentially this idea that you will speak differently depending on who you think is perceiving you. So you kind of have two aspects in the conversations I was looking at, in that you have the person that they're directly talking to, but then the hidden audience that they know is there, but they can't see. They're not entirely sure who makes it up, but they have an idea based on their following. And so your voice is not only being changed by the person you're talking to, but by the general audience as well. That obviously is something that's very hard to control for, but also was something that could have come into the results. For example, when the twins were talking to each other, they very much know the audience. It's their audience. They're in control. They're comfortable with each other. They're twins. They're friends. You're kind of more likely to get that vernacular coming out. Vernacular being your kind of most authentic voice. The voice you use when no one is watching you, which is really hard because when we talk to people, we're talking to people. The vernacular is kind of a very abstract concept. So I was thinking you're getting pretty close to the vernacular there, but then on the straight talking to straight conversation, it was a professional podcast. So could it have been his differences, the fact that not only is voice onset time associated with gayness, it's also associated with diction, formality, professionalism? Is that why those patterns are coming out? So it's definitely something that's hard to pinpoint and hard to make sure you're getting exactly right. But at the same time, I think because all of the resources I was using were YouTube videos and podcasts, that almost kind of standardized it in that you might be using your YouTube voice, but everyone's using their performative voice in this case.
Right.
But yeah.
Makes sense. Yeah, this conversation is so fascinating to me, and I'm really grateful that there's more research coming out on the subject because
100%.
I feel like I get questions from people who are trying to both minimize the gay sound of their voice and also want to telegraph that they're gay. And I don't always have the answers because one thing I'm trying not to do is like just generalize and play to stereotypes around gay people or women and men for that matter. So I don't have a question here, just venting.
No, I feel the exact same. I feel like, I remember in our initial conversations, I made it very clear, I cannot give you answers on how to sound gay or how to sound straight.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, that is not something I can do. And then you came back saying exactly what I wanted you to say, which was, Neither can I. This is not what we're about. Just chat about the research, which I'm more than happy to do. No one has the answers. And I think that's the fun thing about this kind of research is you're not going into it looking for one specific answer. It's just every little bit of research puts a little puzzle piece in to a puzzle that honestly will never be completed. But learning is fun, and the more we learn and the more conversations we have, the less scary it all becomes, and we can all live together happily, maybe, hopefully.
That's the utopia we all want, Erin, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing that I get frustrated about when people are asking me about how to sound gay is that, like, I have many gay friends, okay? Everyone I know basically is gay, and they all sound a lot of different ways, and there isn't a stereotype when I'm like boots on the ground looking at my friends the way they sound. So when people say, how can I sound gay? I'm like, you're asking me to parrot a stereotype about gay people.
Honestly.
I don't want to do that.
It doesn't work that way. Which again is pointing to that idea that it's very much a perceptual phenomenon and not a production one, in that I feel like the majority of people have some abstract idea in their head of what a gay person sounds like. But if you were then trying to actually find gay people who sound like that, you're not actually going to find that many, because everyone speaks differently.
Exactly. But then, as you were saying at the beginning of this conversation, sometimes we can just clock it, and it's not always clear exactly why.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who knows?
One other question I had for you was about your experience with the Lit Review.
Yes.
Some of the research was from the 90s, not that old, but like, did you find any like problematic stuff in the research where people were like equating, gayness to femininity in a way that was like maybe reductive?
Yeah, I feel like that's something that definitely was an idea that came up. I never think it was ever done with any malice. People were just dealing with the information that they had at the time. And it's something that we actually see quite a lot. There are what we call 3 waves of sociolinguistics. The first wave being that originally researchers just thought that people spoke a specific way based on where they're from, their socioeconomic status, their age. That was it. You have no control over it. This is how you speak. It doesn't change. It's stable. This is happening. Once we get to the second wave, people kind of more start to look at more kind of peripheral abstract ideas, kind of those ideas of like social group. There was a really good study on jocks versus burnouts, which was the idea of how are the popular kids in school talking compared to the kids who don't really care and are trying to seem cool in a kind of like kind of way. And then when you get into third wave, which is where we're at kind of now in the research space, which is really looking at speaker agency, the idea that not necessarily consciously, but people are actively constructing ideas and identities for themselves through their voice, and that can change from day to day, from person to person, and it makes it messier, but it's a lot more interesting. And I think that's something that I'd like to do for my if I do ever get PhD funding to do my PhD, is really making it more perceptually based, because a lot of previous research, like my undergrad, has been, okay, let's take this feature, see if it's there. Let's take this feature, see if it's there. Let's take this feature, see if it's there. And a lot of those pre-selected variables and features originally have come from what do women sound like? Oh, women sound like this. Let's see if gay men sound like this. Oh, women do this. Let's see if gay men do this. Which
interesting.
Which on a very basic level, I can understand the rationale, but it's completely reducing. You're not getting any fun out of that. So what I'd like to do is Montgomery and Moore created this amazing tool where essentially you listen to audio clips and you click whenever you hear something interesting. So you can say, click whenever you hear something that makes you consider this person's sexuality or makes you think they sound gay or sound straight. And then from that, what you can do is look to see if, kind of on a time scale, if loads of people are clicking in the same places. And if so, then you can look, okay, what features are shared in these places where loads of people are clicking? What are the features there? And that then allows you to pick variables that are actually from people saying this sounds gay, not just this is what women sound like. And interestingly, Montgomery and Moore found results where people were reporting things that weren't actually there based on stereotypes. So they were doing voices from the Isle of Scilly, and one of the things they had people do was before they even were clicking, just from hearing the voice one time through, make judgments about them, like, do they sound rural? Do they sound urban? Do they sound this? Do they sound that? And they found that when people were rated to sound rural, when it came to the clicks, people were clicking and reporting to have heard roticity. So, like, for example, you have a rhotic accent, you'd say farm, brother. I wouldn't.
Farm,
But
brother.
there you go.
Period.
But some people from, especially the West Country and certain aspects of rural England, will say it farm, brother. And that's very much kind of in the UK accent space. We always kind of, it's a farmer accent, is you say farmer, oh, West Country, cider.
Okay.
That's kind of a stereotype. So when people had already said that they thought they heard the person sounding rural, they'd claimed to hear that this rhoticity, which then when you actually looked at it, wasn't there.
Woof.
But they'd built the idea in their head that they were going to sound this way, that it almost changed the way they were thinking. So that's something I'd like to investigate too. If we start by priming people to be like, how masculine do you think this person sounds?
How
feminine?
gay, how
warm?"
mincing does this person sound?
Exactly. But not
my
directly
God.
saying gay, just things associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
Does that change then what people think they're hearing? Which really taps into the abstract, what do you think a gay person sounds like before we've even heard the voice? So I think it'd be really interesting to see that too.
Absolutely. Oh, it's so complicated.
Yes.
You have to look at like both the background and socioeconomic status of the person listening as well as the person speaking.
100%.
It's fascinating.
Like one really funny story, I find it hilarious, is that they tried to replicate the Canadian study in Manchester, I think it was, and for some reason they found that loads of the people were rating loads of the voices as gay when they wouldn't expect it. Loads of the straight voices were being labelled as gay to an extent that they thought something's going on here. And they managed to work out that it was, obviously in the UK we have a big north-south divide. A lot of the voices they were using were of southern speakers, quite high socioeconomic class London speakers, quite quote-unquote posh sounding. And then the working class listeners thought, they're posh and southern, that sounds gay to me.
Okay, I have to add,
into it.
I was watching the YouTubers from your study and I was listening for like long VOT or whatever. And I was like, they just both sound gay to me because they're British. That's a Canadian.
Exactly. And they're from Essex as well. And I think there's also from Towie, The Only Way is Essex, there's kind of this idea of an Essex boy being simultaneously a bit of a player and a bit of like a happy chappy and quite masculine. He gets the girls, but also a bit of a metrosexual. I'm going to dress nice, I'm going to do my hair, I've got my white teeth. That's kind of an Essex stereotype as well.
Wow, I had no idea.
Yeah, like Essex boys and Essex girls, they're all kind of, they're not all kind of, I mean the stereotype is that people from Essex, not dissing on people from Essex, love you guys, but the kind of stereotype created by reality TV and those kinds of things is almost simultaneously very masculine but with a little bit of a feminine side as well. It's
a
quite
metrosexual thing,
a
you might say.
metrosexual thing, you might say. Indeed, exactly. Yeah.
Okay, I have like one more question. You might not have the answer to this one, but
Go for it.
is there any research done on the lesbian voice?
There is. If you were to ask me for a reference, I can't give it to you right now. I definitely know that people are doing it, but it's not being done as much. I think for me, the kind of urge to study the male gay voice was the fact that I just feel like there's more of a cultural phenomenon around it.
I agree.
People don't always necessarily have an idea of what a lesbian sounds like, but if you were to go to someone now and be like, I'm not going to judge you, do a gay voice, they would do something. Whether it was right or not, they'd have an idea in their head of what a gay person sounds like. And it, again, because I was going more for a perceptual area rather than a production one, that's what I'm interested in, the fact that people think they know whether they do or not. And I think it'd be really interesting to study lesbian voices, don't get me wrong, but that's kind of not my research focus, if that makes sense.
Totally. So the name of this show is Speaking Freely, and I like to ask my guests to speak freely about something that we've talked about today, maybe something we haven't covered. It's kind of an open-ended question, but is there anything that we haven't said that you think needs to be said, maybe about where this research is going or what some things people might not expect from this research?
What a question. I think don't be scared to be curious. I think with conversations like these especially, the only way to move forward into tolerance and openness and honesty and transparency is to give well-meaning people the space to get things a little bit wrong.
Love that.
And to then have those well-meaning people be willing to be told, this isn't quite how it is, and to learn from that. I feel like we all get very scared and like, I don't want to say the wrong thing, I don't want to do this, don't want to do that. But it's not until we open up those conversations with a lot of grace that we start getting somewhere and we start learning things. And also just don't stop being curious, like, generally. Like, I mean, this isn't me trying to brag, but I'm the first in my immediate family to go to university. I was the first person from my school to go to Oxford. My family is my mum works in the NHS, my dad's a retired coal miner, my uncle's a carpenter, my cousins are engineers. It's all, in my family, it's all been very practical, go out, do this, work hard, which I massively respect, but then I was the little neurodivergent black sheep of, but I want to just think about things a lot. And I think coming from kind of a comprehensive state school in kind of a pretty socio-economically deprived area as well, that kind of curiosity isn't always fostered and isn't always appreciated. And that's something I had to kind of find in myself. And if I can encourage anyone to just let your curiosity run free, if you want to learn things, go learn them, then yeah, that made me happy.
That's wonderful. There's so much room for researchers.
Yes.
We have so many unanswered questions that we need looking at. Absolutely. So if people want to find you and find your research, where can they do that?
I am on TikTok, stumbling.through.oxford. I'm also on Instagram under that same name. Come follow me to see things about linguistics, but also my crazy ramblings as a young adult with ADHD. Yeah, it's great.
Well, I will leave links to those below.
Yeah.
And if people want to read this research, can I link that below as well?
Yes, of course. It's there's a link to it in my Instagram bio, but yeah, go ahead, link it. Sure.
I will. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Erin, for coming on and speaking with me today. It was great to talk to you.
It was great to talk to you too.
Bye.
See ya.
Thank you so much to Erin for taking the time to chat with me and for sharing her research with such curiosity and care. You can find links to her TikTok, her Instagram, and her paper in the description below. If you want to explore more conversations like this one, check out my Speaking Freely playlist, where I talk to trans voice practitioners, researchers, educators, artists, and advocates from all over the world. If you like this episode, I recommend checking out my conversation with Sophie Edwards from the YouTube channel We Have Always Existed, where we talk about trans history dating back to the ancient Mediterranean.
From History Times.
And if you're watching this in June 2026, remember that Out Loud, my free 30-day trans voice challenge, is running all month, and all 3 of my courses are 33% off with code OUTLOUD33. Sign up and get your discount and free challenge calendar at the link below.
Scrolling.
Who would you like to see next on Speaking Freely? Let me know in the comments. That's all for today. I've been Renee, and I hope this helps. My tongue's a little lazy.
A little lazy too.
Yeah. Could you turn it down a tiny bit more?
Yeah.
It's still a little bit fast until the coffee kicks in.
Yeah, exactly. Until you need it much faster.
I wonder if people could tell.
We've gone down an additional notch.
Thank you. I can't believe it.
No worries.
I must be really tired today.
Yeah, it's possible.